And this is what God has made, and so we should celebrate who we are as male or female, not to deny it, and to be able to live that out.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Redeeming Identity podcast, where we empower sons and daughters of the perfect Heavenly Father to live from our true core God-given identity. That short clip you just heard is from a recent conversation that Megan and I got to have with our first ever special guest, Dr. Georgia Purdom, the Vice President of Educational Content at Answers in Genesis, an apologetics ministry dedicated to helping Christians defend their faith and proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ. If you remember from a few episodes ago, Megan and I talking about our trip to Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, to the Ark Encounter and the Creation Museum. That is actually the work of Answers in Genesis, Dr. Ken Ham, and a great team that includes Dr. Georgia Purdom. So we are so excited to share this interview with you all. But before we do that, we wanted to catch up and kind of update everyone. First, we want to wish all of the moms out there that listen to this, and especially my mom, Mary, and Megan's mom, Cindy, a happy Mother's Day. We are so grateful and blessed to have such godly women who have really left us such a legacy. And what an amazing thing that we are celebrating this weekend, the miracle of how God creates life, how God puts together a father's DNA and a mother's DNA in such a beautiful, miraculous way. And so that is why we can't wait for you guys to hear from Dr. Purdom. And she has such a knowledge and is so gifted by the Lord and so passionate. She helped oversee the content creation of an amazingly impactful exhibit that Megan and I have had a chance to go through, called the Fearfully and Wonderfully Made exhibit at the Creation Museum. She also co-authored a children's book that brings in some of the content and images from the exhibit to help children see how they are crafted by God, formed in His image, and it is actually called Crafted by God from Fertilization to Birth. And so we hope you get as much out of the conversation with Dr. Purdom as we did. And so we hope you enjoy. Well, we are here with Dr. Georgia Purdom, the Vice President of Educational Content for Answers in Genesis. And Dr. Purdom, first, we just want to welcome you to the Redeeming Identity podcast, and thank you for giving us this time. It really means a whole lot to us because, you have a very busy schedule and you could be doing anything else. And so we thank you for the time.
That's part of the ministry. I consider this is ministry. So I love being able to talk with people, especially about these very important issues in our culture today.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we'd love to give you kind of the floor just to introduce yourself, to tell everyone who you are, where you come from, and a little background info about why and what you do.
Okay. That's a big question. So I grew up in a Christian home in the Midwest in Ohio, and I'm very thankful for my Christian upbringing. Became a Christian when I was 8, went to Christian college, and just was really involved, very much had that Christian life, basically,
Yes.
and I'm thankful for that. And so then when I was in graduate school and getting my doctoral degree, I knew that I really wanted to teach first and foremost. I love teaching. I have a teacher's heart. And started to kind of become interested in apologetics and helping Christians defend their faith, because I was in a secular university and I was being challenged. And so, but even growing up in this very Christian lifestyle and very Christian home and Christian university, I didn't have the answers. And so I realized there was a real need for that. And so I started teaching college at a Christian college after I graduated. And it was really during that time that the Lord started to move in my heart to really have a passion for apologetics. And so I taught for 6 years, and then I always say I was offered my dream job at Answers in Genesis to be able to work there. And I've served in many different roles over the years. I've been there, it'll be 18 years in June. Wow. So I've been there a while. And so right now, my job encompasses a lot of overseeing the educational programming. So we really want to reach that next generation. So our programming that we do at the Creation Museum and the Ark for young people, as well as helping with our publications like our magazine, Answers Magazine and Kids Answers, and then also our curriculum, our educational curriculum. So a lot of things that really touch the next generation and really helping them get that solid apologetics training with science from a biblical worldview, understanding culture from a biblical worldview. And so that's a good portion of what I do at the museum and the Ark.
Wow, it's amazing.
That's so cool. I mean, there's so much there, and we're going to get to some projects, but I did just hear that Dr. Ham, he was talking on an interview about the homeschool or the biblical worldview curriculum. Are you involved at all at the Answers School up there, the academy?
So sometimes, with the Answers Academy, so our Christian school curriculum, 12 Stones curriculum, which is what you're talking about. So I've been involved with that team and directing, consulting, now helping them develop that curriculum. So I'm working closely with that team, but we're developing that curriculum in collaboration with the school. So I'm actually a board member at the school. So I've kind of been there since its beginnings, and helping kind of get it started initially way back when. And so I do go there and teach sometimes. Sometimes teachers will want me to come in and participate in a class. And we do that with they do that with a lot of our speakers and people at Answers in Genesis. It's a really great resource for them to be able to have us come into the classroom or do programming for them or whatever we can do to assist them. So yes, it's a great school. So if anyone's thinking about moving to the area or working for Answers in Genesis, it's now a kindergarten through 12th grade school. We're graduating our first class here in a few weeks. And we're also still looking for teachers. So we always need good, strong, biblical worldview Christian teachers. So answersacademy.org, you can check that out.
That. Okay. Awesome. And we have people that listen from Tennessee and even maybe Kentucky. So maybe we know.
Yes. Who knows?
Briefly, we've been going through this, what we're calling on the podcast, the Redeeming Identity Journey, which is really this discipleship journey of forming a biblical worldview. And I love that you have the background in apologetics, and that's really our heart as well. And just seeing the crisis in our, I think it's 2 or 4% of Gen Z even has a biblical worldview. Maybe it's less. I don't even know. But just seeing the crisis of people have no clue. And like Romans 1 says, is they exchange the truth about God for a lie and worship and serve created things. And look around. Yes, that's what's going on. And so we started a couple episodes ago just really saying, who is God biblically, and looking at that. And then we took a look at the authority of the word and really redeeming a biblical word, a biblical worldview of the word itself, and an understanding of its place, in our lives, submitting underneath it. And so now that we've laid that foundation, now we're moving to in his image that we are. And so this week we're talking about fearfully and wonderfully made. And it hit me as we were been praying and looking through and saying, man, I want to get down to the nitty gritty details here and look at what that really means. In his image, he formed us, he made us, he created us fearfully and wonderfully. And that's why you're here. That's why we wanted you. We've been looking forward to this, and just, with our getting to go to the Ark encounter and the Creation Museum, just were blown away by the fearfully and wonderfully made exhibit and the book that we actually have sitting here that you released as well. And so getting to those nitty-gritty details here, we kind of wanted to break down on the two main topics that we see and things in culture that are just everyday's headlines. And one of those being sanctity of life, and the other one being gender identity. And you can't go anywhere. It's impossible. And so, so just to ask you and to let you kind of just give us your expertise from all your studies from a biblical worldview perspective first. Genesis 1:27, which talks about that he created us in his image. And on, I can't remember, page 3 or 4 from the book, there was a really good definition that you gave of what that really means, that really gave somebody like me an ability to understand. I know it's written for children, but it helps me. So in your study of the Hebrew and in your study of the apologetic side of what does that mean, imago Dei, what does that mean?
Yeah, one thing I would say is that, the image of God is always in some ways hard to define because it is something, it's not like we're physically made in God's image, because God doesn't have a body. So it's not that kind of a thing. And some people have tried to define it as, well, the fact that we can communicate. I think there's a lot of different aspects to it. So I don't think, so I think there's things like communication, we can communicate with God through prayer. But animals can communicate too in different ways, So there's some things that I think are sort of hard to, I think we bear his image in our characteristics, those characteristics of God that we can also have, like kindness and graciousness and mercifulness and things that we can show the animals. That's distinct from animals. They don't really show those things in the way that humans do. We are distinct because, again, we're made in the image of God. But I also think that the image of God is something that's literally like stamped on us, right? And it doesn't, while it's marred by sin, it's marred by the curse, the fact that we're fallen human beings, it's still an indelible stamp on us that can never change, in the sense of it can never be taken away, can never be added to. It just is what God has given us. And it's really what makes us distinct from the animals. We're not just an animal, we're human beings. And that is why we have the sanctity of life. Like, yes, I care about animals. And when I see those commercials on TV that show all these animals that have been abused and, they really try to pull at your heartstrings. And I think, that's terrible. As we're stewards, we're supposed to be stewards of God's creation and take care of animals. But I thought, I have a hard time giving money to that when people are slaughtering babies in the womb. And I don't have a commercial like that on TV encouraging me to give money. Like, I'm just like, when the slaughter of human beings stops in the womb, then I might consider giving money to help the animals in that sense. And I don't mean that to be cruel, but I just mean that to be what is more important, and there's even been studies that have done where people would say they were more likely to save like a dog that's drowning than a person that's drowning. And so it's not just at the level of the babies in the womb. I think it's just at the level of life in general. We just don't have a regard for human life. And I think a lot of that is coming from these evolutionary ideas. Because if you start with evolution, you're nothing more than an animal. You're nothing more than a bag of chemicals. You have no meaning and purpose in life. So then what's the point? Why not kill other people? Why not do terrible things to them? So I think when you start with that, it just gives you a complete disregard for life. And the recent comments by Bill Maher, it just kind of blew me away, where he said basically like, yes, abortion is killing a child, abortion is murder, but who cares?
Oh my gosh.
We'll just decrease the population. There's too many people anyways. I just wow, the blatant disregard for life. And at least he's being consistent. I mean, that I appreciate that. Even though it's hard to hear that, he's being consistent, and a lot of people aren't. And that's the problem. But we need to see that he's kind of showed that for what it is. So I think, again, that image of God is something that he gives us uniquely as male and female, and maybe we can get into more of that later. But I think together, the fact that we have both males and females really bear that image of God completely, as well as it can be in a fallen world.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
That's so well said.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to somebody, a coworker yesterday. We live in right near Montgomery, Alabama, which has at the current time a higher crime rate than Chicago.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a guy from our church who lost a brother, was shot in the head 2 days ago. We had my coworker had a friend who was at a traffic light and got hit by a stray bullet from a gun.
In the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day. In not even the most, I mean, it's not really the safest, but it's not like you're not in the most dangerous area.
Yeah. Right.
And there is just, we see all of the killing that's just happening everywhere. And it's like, no, we are, I think that as a follower of Christ, and I think you're exactly right, the greatest imprint that God has is life. And Jesus said, I have come to give you life.
Mm-hmm.
And to give life abundantly.
Yeah.
And the devil is the one who actually comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
And so it's amazing. And I love what you said, even about those videos, and they'll show these commercials and people, their hearts would break. And I was listening to a news podcast, and they were talking about this woman running for president that's a pro-life Democrat out of New York, and that on the Today Show yesterday, she was able to fund a commercial that, and this will kind of get into the molecular genetic side of everything here, in that she's an atheist. Like, she has told a Christian organization, I'm an atheist, but I have the common ground of seeing how terrible this is, which is funny because you're like, well, where do you build that? Where do you base that off of if there's no God?
Yep, exactly. People are inconsistent though all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but what's funny is she showed very graphic images of these babies that had been aborted very close up to conception. I mean, up to birth. And I don't know, somebody found the remains, and so she's showing them, and the media is having a frenzy about, how could you show something so graphic? That's just wrong. Don't show me that. And it's such a double standard that we have. But so it's funny because you're exactly right. We'll look at a dog and go, oh, that's so sad that people are killing them. But who cares about? And so she can see that it's molecularly. I wanted you to kind of give us your best, maybe 3 minute, maybe that's too short, but 3 to 5 minute breakdown of what happens molecularly from fertilization to birth that is just, anybody can look at and just go, wow, this is life.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the very minute that fertilization occurs, so when the sperm enters the egg and you have the combination of the DNA from both mom and dad, that is a unique human being. Nobody else has ever been like that human being ever, and never will be. And sometimes, you hear the argument, well, the baby's just a parasite, it's just a part of the mom. It's not a part of the mom, because that DNA is completely unique. I mean, some of it is the same as mom, but some of it is dad. So it's not just a part of the mom. If it was a part of the mom, then as the baby grows, the mom has 4 arms, 4 legs. That doesn't make any sense, right? You can't keep consistent with that idea. And if it's a male, then you really can't keep consistent with that idea. This is a unique human being. And so we do get that combination of the DNA. And then as the baby grows, different parts of that DNA obviously are being activated. I mean, there's so many unique things that go on in the womb that kind of get shut off at birth because the baby's grown, and it's ready to be born. And so certain things don't need to happen anymore, basically, that are unique to this rapid growth. I mean, when you think about, you're starting from just one cell and you're going to go to all these amazing cells that do amazing things. I mean, you're forming, it's not something out of nothing, but essentially you're just starting with something very, very small. And one of the things that our Fearfully and Wonderfully Made exhibit, we kind of have to show it magnified to be able to see it, because you can't see it with the naked eye initially, or it'd be very hard to see. And so it's amazing to see all the things that genes that turn off, turn on, turn on at this time, turn off at this time, to be able to make that human being. And it truly is, in some ways, I just think it's so miraculous. How does this even happen? Like,
Yes.
how could you think that this, because again, as a geneticist, like when I was studying this in graduate school, obviously I was taught evolution, but I'm just like, we're studying all this complexity and we're knowing just this tiny, tiny little part of it. And yet you think that all of this came about by random chance over eons of time. I just, it's truly a case of, when people say, Romans 1:18, people suppress the truth and unrighteousness because it is very visible to them. And they just keep denying it because they don't, just like they don't want to see those images of those babies, because they know the truth, but they don't want to be confronted with that truth. They don't want to have to see that truth because they know it's wrong and they know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I think that's so prevalent, because I know from personal experience, when we saw the exhibit, like it hit me in an emotional way, just for what we're walking through. And even though like we've taken steps of, doing everything we can in the natural, literally the other half is the spiritual. I mean, it's beyond what I can do physically or he can do physically. I mean, obviously, we're going to try our best in every area to be the healthiest and track the cycles and do whatever it takes, but the rest really is, because when you look at that exhibit, I mean, I could not even walk. I said, how can you deny the evidence of a creator that's so much bigger than you and me? Because, and I tell that to people, I'm like, when asking how to pray for us, I said, that God will do the supernatural, because, we were doing all that we can in the here and now, but the rest is up to him.
Right.
So it's just beautiful, just to see what he has created and how specific and how detailed he is. It's just amazing.
It is
amazing.
I was blown away, and it was one of those blown up images that is in the book, centerfold portion of the craft. What is the title of the book?
Crafted by God.
Crafted by God. And it's of the egg and the sperm, and I just am going. A question to ask somebody that's on the evolution side to go. So how does the sperm know? I mean, it's
what
just
happens before it develops the ability to move to get up to where the egg is. I mean, you're not going to have any fertilization
unbelievable.
Then. And so when you think about all of the steps, and you've got to have two individuals, developing. I mean, they never know how to explain the evolution of two biological sexes. They never know how to explain that, because you've got to have them evolving at the same time. And if all the parts aren't there, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if those two individuals aren't near each other, it's not going to work either. So it doesn't make any sense. It's just completely ludicrous to think that all of that could have evolved.
Yeah.
That is so true. Agreed. And I think that's a great segue. I know we are running out-ish of time, which is why this is perfect in this next little question, because the next two episodes we're going to have somebody that deals directly with a lot of ministry to men and boys about what does it mean to be male biblically and what does it mean to be female biblically. But I want to talk on the gender identity side from a biblical worldview perspective and molecularly. So Genesis 1:27, that it says in his image that he created us, and he created us male and female. He created them. And so,
which we saw in the book too, about just the page about the male, like you have the little girl and the little boy and the different chromosomes, and there was even a statement about just because of a little girl plays with trucks doesn't mean she's a boy, or talking about just even, and we actually talked about that not too long ago in one of our previous episodes about how just personalities and traits doesn't make us just prone to the one gender. It's right. So that's really kind of what we want to break down.
And break down one biblically, how do you bring that? And then molecularly, the amazing science of the XY DNA, and the XX chromosomes.
Yeah.
That anybody, even atheists like Richard Dawkins, looks at the insanity of
trying to change genders.
He sees it as insane. So
because it's hard to deny the science on this. So
exactly.
That's what I always say. Like the Bible tells us that there's male and female. And then when we look at science, it confirms that, right? And so that's how it always works. We start with the Bible, we say, what does it say? And then we see that of course, the science is going to confirm that. And so it really simply put, a female is 2 X's and a male is an X and a Y when it comes to chromosomes. So my new saying that I have patented is no Y, no guy. If you don't have a Y chromosome, you don't have a guy. That's just now. I'm not saying there can't be, you always have to caveat it, but there are sex chromosome abnormalities. And there are individuals that suffer with conditions and situations that are not ideal. But that is because we live in a fallen world.
Yes.
And we don't argue from the abnormal that is somehow normal and try to make that. And in the research that I've done, people that have sex chromosome abnormalities, there's a very low percentage of them that are even transgender or homosexual. So even if you're trying to come up with some sort of genetic basis for that, there just really isn't any evidence of that. Of anybody, those would be the individuals you think might be more prone to that, and they're just not. And so anyways, so there's a lot of things that Y chromosome is really important for guy traits. Basically, it's the maleness because it has what's called the SRY region gene. And that gene basically produces a protein that turns on genes that are important for males to have. So they can develop male secondary sex characteristics, primary sex characteristics, all of those things. If that Y chromosome is not there, then the embryo that's developing is female. They become, so the default's kind of female. I always say the default's female. If the Y is there though, then they become male. That's the only reason that they become male. Wow. We don't see it externally until about 6 to 8 weeks after fertilization, but internally it's there from the beginning, right? They're either XX or they're XY. Wow. And so, and there's so many studies that have done, so I just did a presentation on this, looking at the biological differences between males and females. It is insane. The number of things, like just how our brains are different, even down to some of our cellular functions are different, even though I would think they would be the same, but they're not. And I don't even know why, all of that. But the more and more that we study it, the more and more we see those differences, and we need to take care of those. We need to understand that, because it matters for how men and women are treated differently for disease, how we metabolize medicine, all of those things. And so from a clinical standpoint, it's important to know that. Wow. And this is what God has made, and so we should celebrate who we are as male or female, not to deny it, and to be able to live that out. Not that it's a certain, like you were saying, not that it's a certain list of things necessarily. Yeah. I was more of a tomboy growing up. I liked the outside things and doing things like that. And that's okay. That doesn't make me a boy. It just makes me a girl who likes to do those kinds of things. And so I think it's important to understand that, but also it's important to embrace just how our biological function. And just to give you one example of this, because I could go on for hours, but one example, so females tend to have a better immune system than males. And they think part of that is because we have 2 X chromosomes. One of those usually gets inactivated, so it's not active, but they're finding it's not completely inactive in females. And a lot of the genes that are active are immune system genes. So so that's good. Why? Well, because females are in social situations a lot more, and they take care of children that have a lot of germs.
Exactly.
And they're usually responsible for taking care of the home overall and a lot of those things. And again, it has nothing to do. I work outside the home, but I still take care of my home. I'm the primary person that does that because that's my job. That's my function. So you see that biological function design really related to function. Guys tend to have higher red blood cell counts and more platelets, which is good because they go to war and they hunt and they get cut and they need help, right?
Yeah.
They protect. And so it makes sense. Like when you look at the design, you see it being lived out in the function that God has designed for males and females. And it's just completely unique. And again, we need to embrace that.
Yes.
And I'm not denying that people have had, a lot of times there's sexual abuse involved and individuals are struggling with various things. But the key is not to deny who you are. The key is to accept who you are and get the help that you need, to work through these things. Right.
Yes. That's right.
So good.
That's right.
And I that's part of my story is growing up in a culture that deemed anything creative and musical, artistic as feminine. And so that's where the Lord redeemed me and my story from a place of really struggling in some really dark places before really understanding and now that I've got some guys that I minister to, and one of them loves theater, he loves art, he loves creativity. I said, being a creative doesn't make you feminine. It makes you more like God, and he's a father. So is that not the most male characteristic you've ever heard? And he's like,
blown away.
I could also go on for hours about, the enemy's assault on creative men throughout history, because when creative men make music and art, like, it glorifies God and it worships him, and the enemy hates that. And it also keeps men from doing what you said, protecting. And
exactly.
And so, we just want to thank you so much. Like, this is so amazing. We just have one final question. You don't have to, and it's not a long. What projects that you can share? What are you currently working on that people can be looking forward to from Answers in Genesis or any of the things that you're associated with?
Oh my goodness. Well, we have a women's conference every year, so I'm always super excited about that. People can go to answersforwomen.org for more information on that. So we have a new conference that we do every single year. We already have 2,000 women registered for next year, which is amazing. We actually sold out one of our conferences this year. And so I love teaching women to be able to defend their faith and defend it effectively. So I'm always working on new things for that and directing that every year. And just, I'm really excited too. We're going to be going to a lot of homeschool conferences and just the curriculum that we're developing. I just think it's so important for parents and teachers as they continue to raise that next generation. So I'm involved in a lot of those different things. And I don't have any books on the horizon. I'd rather present than write, even though I know writing is really important. But I love being able to present. So I'm going to be doing a dinosaur conference later this year. Dinosaurs. So I have a presentation on that, and I love talking about that and geeking, science nerd out. So I'm excited about that as well.
That's really neat.
Well, that's awesome. And we do recommend anybody listening, anybody tuning in, go to where in Kentucky is the actual address, the city.
Right. So it's just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. So that's probably the easiest way to describe it. It's in a place called Petersburg, Kentucky, but it's easier so we have this big loop called 275. So it's right off 275, right before the Cincinnati, Kentucky airport.
Yeah.
Yes, we enjoyed it.
So wherever you are in the world, fly to Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Airport, and seriously, we took 2 days.
Took us 2 days. We probably needed longer.
So you could
Yeah.
And for guys like me, who is also a nerd and will spend hours reading everything, I was like, is it really time to go?
Yeah,
So,
we do have books too. All of our
yes.
signs are in books. So we have a book for the museum and a book for the ark. So I always tell people, because I see people taking pictures, I'm like, no, just buy the book and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Purdom.
Yes.
And we just pray God's blessings and favor over all your work and everything that you and Dr. Ham and the rest of the team are doing. It really is making generational impacts, and people are coming to know Jesus through it, which is the most exciting thing.
Yes.
So we just thank you so much for your time.
Yes. Oh, thank you.